Alright Lala, I hope that you solved these equations which I've already sent you by link right here. All you have to do is click on this link and solve these 4 equations, and once you're done, we're pretty much done with this. So let's go back to the other functions. So you've already done this function, now you should know how to find out a straight line. The second thing is this particular function. If you look at this function, it says y is equal to 15. You can see that mx is missing from here, which means it's only saying that y is equal to c. The equation of this line is y is equal to c, which is y is cutting the x-axis at 15. If it says y is equal to minus 10, it would cut at this point. This is what your line would look like. If it says y is equal to 5, it will cut at this point. This is what your line would look like. And if it says, for example, x is equal to 2, your line would look like this. If it says x is equal to 4, your line would look like this. If it says x is equal to 7, your line would look like this. If it says x is equal to minus 2, your line would look like this. So I'm guessing you get the idea what I'm trying to say here. What I'm trying to say here, Lala, is the fact that once you have an equation which looks like y is equal to any number from 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., or x is equal to any number which is 1, 2, 3, etc., like the list can go on. You basically get 2 scenarios in which your line looks like this. And the equation of this line is equal to y is equal to any number, and that number is where this line is cutting that point. And in the second case, when you have a straight line, so this is your horizontal line, and if you have a vertical line, so it's going to be, the formula for this line is x is equal to whatever number you have here. Let's say this number right here is 5. So the equation for this line is x equal to 5, and the equation for this line is, let's say this number over here is also 5. So the equation for this line is 5. So what's unique about these 2 equations is that you don't have any mx over here, which means you basically don't have any gradient. Now what is happening in this case is that you don't have any rise. Your rise is equal to 0. So if you remember the formula that we had, which is y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2, you will remember, so you will see there's no change in y is equal to 5 consistently for this particular equation. So your change in y is 0. So this equation is equal to 0 because there's no change in y. There is a change in x, however, because x at this point is 0 and x at this point is, let's say, 10. So there is a change in 10. So a 0 minus 10 or 10 minus 0, however you want to put it, that is over 10. But anything over 0 is basically equal to 0. So the overall equation of this line, the overall gradient of this line is 0. Right? Now let's turn to the second case. Now in the second case, if you remember again, so your line is x is equal to 5. So in this case, because there is no change in x, there is a change in y. So your y changes from, let's say, from 10 to 0. So there is a change in y. So your change in y, why is this color so dull? So your change in y is, for example, 10 minus 0, which is 10. However, there is no change in x. Your change in x is equal to 0. So it's 10 over 0. And if you remember, anything that is over 0, in mathematical terms, that is termed as undefined. So the gradient of the second line is undefined. Whereas, so the gradient of the second line is undefined, whereas the gradient of the first line is 0. So these are 2 unique cases which he's trying to explain over here. When he says y is equal to 15, he's just basically trying to say to you that the gradient of this line is 0 and the equation of the line is simply where the line cuts the x-axis at 15. Uh, Let me try to explain this to you by way of an example. So he's saying the same thing here. It says straight across. A line that goes straight horizontal has a gradient of 0. Why? Because there's no change in y. Your numerator is equal to 0, so your overall equation is equal to 0. However, there is a change in x of 5 units, as you can see, but anything over 0 is equal to a 0 in itself. And in this case, the gradient of the line is undefined. So there is a change in y. So y1 changes, y1 as in like, so y changes from y1 to y2 by 3 units. So you do have a numerator in this case, but your x is not changing. So your x is equal to 0, and anything over 0 in mathematical terms is defined as undefined. So this is this case that he tries to explain over here for this line. So now you know these two graphs. You know the equation of a straight line, how to form that, and you know the equation of horizontal. This is horizontal and vertical lines. These are your two simplest forms. And then now we have to move on to quadratic and cubic forms. But before we move on to quadratic and cubic forms, okay, so we have enough time. So before we move on to quadratic and cubic forms, there's something else that you need to know about straight lines that I have to teach you right now, and I'll test you on this. Is, for example, when you have an equation of a line, for example, the equation of my line is y is equal to 4x plus 3. I've taken the exact same line that you have in your syllabus right now. 4x plus 3, this one right here. And I ask you to draw this line. How are you going to draw this line? So the way you have to, and you should know this is very important. So the way you have to draw this line is that you just take 3 points. So you take y, and you can put in 3 points. For example, एक y का minus point ले लो. So for example, -5, and then you take 0, and then you take +5. Now these are any 3 arbitrary points that I've taken. You can take any of the points that you want, but usually the thumb of the rule is कि एक negative value ले लो, एक 0 ले लिया करो, और एक positive value ले लिया करो. You could have taken -10, 0, 20, or whatever. But the point is you take one negative value, 1, 0, and then one positive value in order to draw the line. So I plotted. So for those points of y, I need to find out what are my values of x for these particular points of y. So you're going to put -5. Oh, sorry, it's supposed to be the opposite. You're supposed to find y. These are the values of x. So sorry. These are the values of x. And then for the respective values of x, you're supposed to find y. So you're supposed to put -5 in this equation at this point and find out what the corresponding value of y would be. So when I put -5 here, I'm going to get -20. -20 plus 3, y is equal to 17. Similarly, when I put 0 here, this entire thing will become 0 plus 3, 3. And when I put 5 here, this entire thing will become 20 plus 3, 23. So now I have my values of x, and with it the corresponding values of y. I'm writing this again so you don't get confused. How much time do I have left? Okay. So we'll probably continue this in the other video because I can't do this in 30 seconds.